Namaste. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to my channel. My name is Sadhana, and I am an intuitive reader. I work professionally as a reader and a healer. And I started this series, Card Comparisons for You, as a request from one of my subscribers. So I want to thank you for the inspiration for this series, the ongoing inspiration. Thank you for your requests. Thank you for continuing to support my channel and my work in this way. So today we carry on with Justice and Temperance. And I want to say welcome to Gerald Tarot Stash and Hannah, Dancing Soul Sister, and Joel. Hello, and welcome. And welcome to those of you in the background as well, too. We looked, I believe, at Temperance last week as well, too. Temperance and Judgment. And today we're going to look at two cards that, by the name of the card itself, are quite confusing. These are words perhaps that we use simultaneously, interchangeably in English. And maybe that is one of the issues and the confusion. It's because we get wrapped up on the lexicon, justice and judgment. Often we think about a courtroom. We think of a courtroom where justice may or may not be served, and then a judgment comes down. A judgment comes down from a judge. A judgment may come down via a jury. There's also the whole issue of self-judgment, which is a big part of our healing journeys. I'm just looking at these two words. These are big words. They both start with J-U. I mean, it makes sense that people get confused about them. So my first question is, what is it about these two cards that is most confusing for you? Or alternatively, do you see these cards quite differently? So I'm going to share with you some basic and then some not so basic thoughts. And I wonder if I can do this without putting my hand in front of the camera. I'm doing prep. So I mentioned that I'm going to do a Marielle deep dive on my channel. And so I'm doing some prep in reviewing. Right now, I'm just going back through the Book of Thoth, the Aleister Crowley book. And I've also ordered some other resources, some books that aren't in my library. And one of them is the Book of Lies. Crowley published several books over his lifetime. And I was just really intrigued by such a great title, The Book of Lies. The poem at the beginning. And one of the things so my spiritual journey started, or I'm going to say the game was amplified when I was living in Japan. So I was in my early 20s. And this is when I was on my own for 3 years. I had my own apartment. I did a lot of exploring. I was intrigued with the language and the culture. And so as my intrigue increased, so did my ability to absorb the language and the culture. And I became quite fluent, had no problem with honorifics and pronunciation and so forth. Picked up some of the local dialect where I was as well, too. So in that experience, I was I was comfortable. Not only was I comfortable, but I was led inside many inward chambers and doors and things like that. And it was there that I had this kind of filter that lifted. And I saw all of a sudden this it was like a melting. It was like a melting of it's so hard to describe. Spiritual experiences are very hard to describe. but it was like this light, or this weight lifted, and all this light came in. And what I was witnessing was the realization that spirituality was spirituality. And that here, where I was in this Shinto shrine, wasn't anything to do with Shinto. It was just about being with and in amidst God. And so my solo journey lasted about 3-4 years, and 5, maybe longer. I forget what I was saying here, but when I reread this poem at the beginning of Crowley's book, it just took me back to that moment where I saw no separation between any forms of spirituality. And I want to read this to you. I'm sure you've all read this before. The poem is called Wheel and Woe. The great wheel of samsara, the wheel of law, the wheel of taro, the wheel of heavens, the wheel of life. All these wheels be one, yet all these the wheel of the taro only avails 3 consciously. Meditate long and broad and deep, O man, upon this wheel, revolving in thy mind. Be this thy task to see how each card springs necessarily from each other card, even in due order from the fool unto the 10 of coins. Then, when thou know'st the wheel of destiny complete, mayst thou perceive that will which moved it first. There is no first or last, that's in brackets. And lo, thou art passed through the abyss. And so at the beginning of this poem, we reflect upon the wheel of samsara, or the wheel of samskaras, which comes through yogic teachings, Hindu teachings, the wheel of law through Buddhism and the teachings of Dharma, the wheel of taro, the wheel of heavens in Christianity, the wheel of life. We can reflect on the pagan wheel of the year and how all of these wheels intersect. And one of the things for me when I reflect on the justice card is where it comes in the RWS is after the wheel. And it's funny that I'm reading from Crowley's book, and Crowley places justice as 8, which I will discuss a little bit later this morning. But the wheel turns, and alignments, corrections are made. And if we don't make corrections ourselves, then corrections happen. And whether you see corrections as samskaras, whether you see these corrections as fate or destiny, the corrections are going to happen one way or the other. And when I think about and meditate on justice, it's about the more we can become in alignment with our own patterns, our own samskaras, the more we can stay at the center of the wheel, and the less painful these changes are. So justice is served by a greater divine energy, or it's served here in the 3-dimensional world. And really, justice is justice is justice. It doesn't matter where it comes from. But it's just so interesting. It's so interesting. I want to say, is anybody else here? I asked you a question. I want to see if you responded to my question, first of all. Shanti, namaste, hello. Joel is opening a new deck. Yes, this is what I'm prepping for. Good morning, Shannon. I don't have a date yet. I'm still kind of outlining what I'm doing and prepping for it, because it's it's a lot of preparation to do this. And I'm not sure if I'm going to do it over 5 videos or 25 videos. I have no idea. So it's still very much in the works. And I don't have the second edition, which I still need to purchase because I want the cards that are changed as well for the videos. So it's not happening in the next 2 weeks, let's say that. Okay, so where am I at here? Justice. What is justice and what is judgment? And the question I asked you, nobody has answered. Snow, Fox, Tarot, Salina, hello, namaste, good morning, welcome. It feels like the application of judgment. Okay, the application of judgment. So those are some reflections on justice. Now I want to reflect on what this judgment card means to me and the way that we see this unfolding in other decks as well too. And to reflect on alternate names. So perhaps you can start listing in the chat alternate names for both of these cards, because there are, of course, alternate names. And some of those alternate names help us to understand a little bit better, okay? So I've referred to, on this channel, also in different classes that I've been teaching, the movie, The Adjustment Bureau. The Adjustment Bureau. And this is a movie that I think can really help to understand the energy of these two cards beautifully. And if you haven't seen this, in a nutshell, the protagonist sees for a moment behind the veil. And why he sees behind the veil, I'm not sure that is clear how that he does. He's a politician. So he sees behind the veil, and behind the veil, there are some rather, some dark, some not so dark, some very light angels, if you want to call them that, who guide us through life. And they all carry a book. And in this book, they can see whether we are on course or not on course. And they make corrections, and they help us by spilling a cup of coffee so we miss our bus and so forth. All kinds of things, right? So changing traffic lights so we slow down, or we miss a meeting, or we don't get somewhere, things like that. And these little corrections, these things that get in our way, sometimes cause a tremendous amount of frustration, because we have plans, right? We have plans. We want to be in control. We know where we need to be, or we think we know where we need to be. And so I think part of the issue in readings, with especially the card on the left, is that there's this power issue. And so to really, really help the querent when it comes to understanding justice in particular, there's a real need to understand the "it's not happening to me" thing. It's happening for me. The whole idea about the demigod Ganesha, these obstacles are placed in our way for our greater good at times, right? The obstacles are not always a negative thing. And so this kind of understanding can really, really help a lot of people with the Justice card. Now, to me, judgment, so I want to just carry on with this movie. So as this protagonist sees behind the veil, he starts to rebel against the decisions of the angels and the directions of the angels. And eventually he starts to work with one of them who wants to support him because he kind of sees his point of view. Towards the end, we understand that there is some kind of a correction that was missed. And it's almost as if the energy of love prevails. Doesn't love always prevail? And the judgment that comes through at the end is that love will bring these two main characters back on track into a higher place. And so how judgment happened there was that the characters were working with, it started where they're working against spirit, but then he was working with spirit. What my point is here, there's something about between the space of justice and judgment, this journey of letting go, this journey of control, this journey of needing to know. And I'm not just talking about male identified people, but too much testosterone, that need for fixing things, for example. And it happens to a lot of women who are fixed in their careers and so forth. We want to be in charge. We have to have things, da 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 da. And so the judgment for me is that point in the tarot where we surrender. The point in the major arcana where we surrender, where we lie down and live, and where we let go, where we let God. And in this particular judgment card, if you look in the background, there's 3 more people. Not every judgment card that's drawn this way. Some of the older ones, they only have 3 with their backs toward us in the foreground. But I really like the image of these 6 people. You can imagine these 6 people almost as a circle of people. And I'm just thinking of perhaps like the 10 of Pentacles in a suit, in a particular deck. There's a oneness. There's a oneness here too that's also created with this visual of the 6 people, right? So I don't know. I feel like the keyword awakening. Did you guys start putting in the alternate words? The keyword of awakening is really beautiful here. I haven't prepared a lot of alternate cards for you today. We have looked at some in the past. I can grab a couple. I've got a few decks here. The card on the left and the card on the right feel like quite a different stage. It's a different stage. So I often use a gaming analogy, so the card on the left, justice, is a result of something that you did. It's a cause and effect. It has a cause and effect. Whereas the judgment card is when you finally understand the pattern, and then you get it, and then you level up in the game, right? You see the path through the forest. It becomes clear, and so you know how to respond accordingly. Yeah. Okay. Hello, Scott. Welcome. All right. I have a hang-up about the judgment card. It feels a negative connotation, and I have a hard time thinking positively about it. Okay. I mean, I have so many different things I could say about this card. So let's think about judgment. For those of you that know a little bit about the Bhagavad Gita. In the Bhagavad Gita, this is the story of Krishna. And so this is a part of a much larger epic called the Mahabharata. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna, who is a warrior, is paused on the middle of the battlefield having a little chit chat with his charioteer, Krishna, who at the point of the conversation doesn't know that Krishna is an avatar of God. And Krishna is questioning his dharma, his role in life, his life path. He is a soldier, and his path in life he is his karma, his dharma is to be a soldier. And in order to advance his soul, in order to evolve, he needs to embrace and fully embody the energy of the soldier. It is his divine right to be a warrior. And so this long conversation ensues, and Krishna teaches him about what it means to embrace one's dharma and different ways, different techniques of doing that. And so at the end, he finally embraces his dharma and goes forward into the battle. At some point during that epic poem, he also understands who Krishna actually is. But it's through this conversation with his trusted friend, Krishna, that he has that aha moment and then goes forward. So that sense of trust in what it is we are supposed to do. So judgment to me isn't about, it's not about, it's about moving forward. I mean, think about what the next card is. Judgment to me is not about going back, it's about going forward. And so when judgment appears, the real question is, are you ready? Or do you have the courage? Do you have the courage to go forward? And I was just leafing through the Sasarai Bito, and I know I've shared this one several times. And so we have the woman who has a blanket around her, a futon probably wrapped around her. And the idea here is that it's like a cocoon. And I just read a meme this morning about this. The the caterpillar realized he wasn't going to die. He thought he was going to die and suffocate in that cocoon until magically he turned into a butterfly. And so you often see the butterfly as in the judgment card. There's this blossoming. But there's fear in blossoming. There's fear in letting go. There's fear in the vulnerability that is associated with awakening. I wonder if I have it here. Should be very, very easy to find. I believe I do. And if I don't, I will get it for you, because I have my trimmed copy of the Osho Zen here. And I believe, yes, it is. So here is another, let me move justice out of the way, right? So awakening. This is a spiritual transformation. And so if there is a fear with this card, it's the fear of, am I ready to let go? Which is a very different fear than the fear in the justice card. The fear in the justice card is, am I willing to face what I did in the past? Am I willing to acknowledge what I did in the past? Do you see? These are quite different stages. And it's such a beautiful keyword, because I think it helps us to get away from if you are not comfortable with the Christian symbology. Justice says justice, equity, truth, and virtue. Let's go through some of here. That is beautiful, Hannah. And Janine is here too. Yes, and I don't think that these big hitter cards come as a surprise in the tarot. that you're not going to get this card if there hasn't been some major stuff going on. Just like if there are a lot of swords in a reading, somewhere I believe that you're definitely ready for this. This is a challenging path, and you've chosen this challenging path, and Spirit is nudging you, and sometimes those nudges can be very painful and not easy at all. Okay, so let's address this. Fear, guilt, and punishment. This is, so where does fear live? Where does fear live? Fear, like in the body, in the chakra system. Do you know where fear lives? And this is something that you can look at in associated cards. So fear often will show up as a lot of pentacles, or there'll be other cards of clinging, cards of holding on too tight, right? You can't unpeel those fingers from what somebody is holding on to. So did you say like fear lives in guts? Yes. And in the chakra system, it lives in the root. Fear lives in the root chakra, right? It has to do with safety. It has to do with survival. And there's also an element of the second chakra too, because fear fuels the adrenal glands, and we live in a fight or flight world. And then we physically get really, really sick. And so there's going to be a lot of, if you're understand this, there's a lot of second chakra stuff out of whack as well too, if fear is an issue. And so in learning and understanding the tarot, understanding layers of these concepts can really, really help. Guilt. Okay, so guilt lives in the waters of the second chakra. And you'll often see when there is a lot of guilt, you're probably going to see a lot of swords comes up, because often guilt is released through the throat. And the path through judgment, if you're going to see swords, is going to be through the voice, through letting go through the voice. And then punishment. Wow. Yeah, punishment. So punishment is, I'm going to go back to that things are happening to me kind of attitude, right? It's more of a victim mindset. And so as a healer and using the tarot in really difficult conversations and situations, I try to unpack these big negative energies and help people to understand them. So, yeah, again, we have to trust. If we don't trust, then we live in fear, right? So fear and trust. Fear also lives very much. Fear is what keeps us in an unhealthy balance. Fear is what keeps us in anger instead of trust. So fear is also associated with the fire of the third chakra as well, too. Okay. Curiosity and openness. Right. And what I'm saying is one thing always affects another thing. We can't look at anything in isolation. And so these concepts of justice and judgment are huge, right? They're huge. So depending on the nature of question and how much time you have with somebody and how many readings you've done with somebody, taking time to unpack these is so very, very worthwhile. Okay. Now, I want to go to, totally agree with what you said, Hannah, PTSD. So PTSD is so very, very real, and that can come to, well, I'm sure you know different cards that can show up in, but if you are working with a client who, again, if you're working with a client, and I've said this many, many times, where the issue feels extremely serious, for me, one of the first things I ask is, are you seeing a counselor? Do you have a psychiatrist, or do you have a team behind you? You're not just coming here as a one-off. And I have a list of people that I can refer if they are local. So this is a really important question. And I try my best to assess this out depending on the types of questions people ask in live readings as well too, because while the tarot can offer support, we need other support as well too. Like here's an example of a card that is going to give us a lot of clues in this kind of topic of a reading. Okay. Now, what I thought I would do here was to look a little bit at the numerology. So if justice is 11 and judgment is 2, then, sorry, 20, then they both reduce to 2, right? So they are both connected to the frequency of the high priestess. And I think it's really interesting about the analogy of the consequences of looking behind the veil. And it almost feels to me like justice is in front of the veil and judgment is peering behind the veil. I love in the justice card that we have the purple veil behind the person in the foreground. It is, to me, if there's other purple in the reading, if I'm using this kind of a deck, I love to look at color and help to weave the colors, because purple is that card of spirit, color of spirituality. It's a higher frequency. It's a 6th, 7th chakra kind of energy. So this is more in alignment with judgment than other colors and other frequencies. So I do pay attention to that. But what I was saying is there's the frequency of the high if justice is 11. If justice is 8, I feel a little bit differently. Now, if justice is 8, and we have, do I have a deck here where justice is? I do. I should have one here where justice is 8. I have the wild unknown here. If justice is 8, then yeah, I mean, it's entirely up to you, but it has a slightly different energy. And so I do pay attention to the numerology. And if I have the justice card and the judgment card, if justice is 11 in a reading, and there's a bunch of other 2s that come up, then these are clues that I'm going to work with in the reading for sure. But if justice is 8, I feel it has a slightly different feeling for me, because as 8, it's not at the center of the major arcana. It's at the beginning of the 2nd septenary, and that is following the energy of the Chariot, and it takes on a different nuance. So take some time in your decks to pay attention to justice as 8 or justice as 11, because it feels different. It feels very, very different. Like this is one I know, like the Fountain Tarot, justice is 8. And so if justice is 8, then it's more in alignment with strength. Let me get the strength card from the Well Done Known as well too. And the Judgment card. Let us do that. Because this is all beautifully, beautifully connected, which I should have pulled out earlier. So let me know if you agree or disagree with that, or if you have a hard time with that, because a lot of people do tend to ignore that, especially when they're working with RWS, because when you're working with RWS, you assume that it's going to follow the pattern of strength as 8 and justice as 11, and that the meaning is the meaning is the meaning. Well, the meaning doesn't necessarily have to stay the same. You can interpret that in a way that makes sense. Okay, so just give me 2 seconds here. So there's your High Priestess energy. I don't know, just it'd be really good if you had your own insight into this, or let me know if you've even thought about this. So here is strength. Okay, so how is justice in alignment with strength as an 8? Oh, and I need to pull out that card as well too. So let me know what you think about that. Here's Judgment. Hello, Kiara, welcome. I don't feel, so Kiara, I totally recognize what you're saying. I don't feel that it's a choice of preference. I think it's important to work with the deck that you have. Work with the deck that you are working with. So justice is 8. Right. Okay. Sorry, I forgot what I was saying here. Anyway, my point is just it helps if you work with the energy of the deck that you're working with. So then if justice is 8, then I'm going to be a little bit more focused on the 8s than I am on the 2s, and to see what energy I can pick up on. Whereas if justice is 11, then I'm going to be looking at the energy of the 2 of Wands, the 2 of Cups, and to see if there's something I can glean from that. So this really helps in a reading to see which direction I'm going. So like Selena is observing here, take out your tarot decks that you're working with and just kind of reflect on how the numerology plays into all of this. If you are a beginner, this can be a little overwhelming, because it means there needs to be some a little bit more knowledge, a little bit more awareness. There needs to be a lot more pausing as you read, but it's so worth it if you take your time to build in the energy of the numbers, because the energy of the numbers are not accidental, and they will help you to to weave and to build your story in your reading. Okay. I want to go back to, we're not talking about strength today. Okay, so now let's go to this particular card. So if judgment, so judgment, not if, judgment is always 20. We have a couple of different ways to view this card. And once justice is, sorry, I'm just very quickly, I prepped most of these cards. Here I am. So we can look at judgment as a amplified Wheel of Fortune card. So a double 10. So if the Wheel of Fortune, and this, if you have the Vision Quest Tarot, you'll know what I'm talking about. So the Wheel of Fortune is the little wheel, and judgment is the big wheel. And I believe in the Vision Quest Tarot, it's called the little medicine, or the medicine wheel and the big medicine wheel, or something like that. So that might help you to see it as a double wheel. Like it's a instead of a 45-degree turn, or instead of a 90-degree turn, it's a 180-degree turn. And I would say, this one is more like a quarter turn, and this one is like a half, right? Completely going in the other direction, turn. So that's one way. And then we cannot not we cannot not look at the Fool as well too. Because if you are looking at a 2 and a 0, or some other, there's the numbers just really help to tell the story, because with that 0 there, we do have an association with the Fool as well too. And I think if the Fool is going to show up in the reading, it is either encouraged, might not be taken positively, but yeah, this is like, you need to jump through. You need to jump through this veil and get to the other side. So the card associations play into this in a huge way for me as a reader. I pay attention, and the specific meaning of the card will definitely be affected by the question, and more so by the surrounding cards. Let's go to Gerald's comment. I notice repeat numbers in readings, especially when minor numbers repeat the major numbers. Yeah, so this is, it's a huge part of, like, imagine having a reading. I had the High Priestess right here. Where did she go? Imagine having a reading where you've got I have another 2 here from the Wild Unknown I wanted to show you. Okay, suppose in your reading you have these cards are slightly larger or something. Let's do this. You've got the Judgment card, you've got the High Priestess card, and you've got the Fool card. So you've got 20, and then you've got 2-0. Like, these are really important clues. So I can't emphasize that enough. Okay, so in summary, in summary, look to the surrounding cards, because that's going to help. Listen to the listen to the language of the querent to try to figure out what this karmic reset is about. If there is any fear or guilt or shame, and shame we didn't talk about. Shame lives in a whole other place. Shame usually lives in the solar plexus. These reflections are an important conversation to have with the querent. And there is always a choice, right? There's always a choice. Both of these cards can be seen as extremely positive. And when they are feared and when they are in shadow, it's because of a fear of change, right? It's a fear of moving forward. And so you want to look for that. And again, look for cards of clinging and holding on. And then you will have a conversation, right, to help perhaps release. And so maybe a follow-up reading you could do is to do a quick 3 card and ask, how can I, or what can I do? What do I need to know about letting go? Or what is it? Why am I holding on so tightly? Okay, so there's a deep correlation here between change in both of these cards. Change coming just before justice and judgment being a double change card. So thanks, Hannah. Alrighty, so I'm gonna leave it at that for today. I have quite a list, thanks to you, for future videos, but as I'm talking, if something comes up, please make sure you send me that request either in an email or once the chat ends, you can add that in the comments below. Things are processing pretty quickly these days. So thank you for being here this morning. I will be back shortly with live readings, and I look forward to seeing you all soon. Namaste. Take good care of yourselves.